So I was not here at your last meeting, but if I'm understanding correctly, I know you guys went through the power standards last time in more detail and like deconstructed them and looked at the PBA. So when we kind of look at that work that you did last time, and am I also understanding correctly, like is this the first time 1C is really like being highlighted in a unit this year?
In Unit 1, we had it
Right.
where they gave presentations, and so definitely not the first time, but it's been a while.
Well, but also in Unit 3, we also did it.
We like
because they're going
reviewed
to-
it.
Yeah.
I think it was a highlight there. It wasn't a main, like,
Right.
the main
So-
focus.
So this time it's like the accountability piece in terms of like this, we're not only giving them the feedback, but that feedback will be like recorded in the grade book this time as like a power standard for
Yes.
the skill of focus for the grade book for the unit, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So when we kind of look at that standard, and it did a really good job here with like the clarifying statements and the context of it. When we look at the context and the standard, which rows on the future ready communication rubric kind of pair nicely with what you guys already planned to do?
I would have to say clear communication ideas, language usage, positive body language. So that's all of that. And
use of reliable sources. We kind of assessed them.
right, we
For
did. But see that, yes, as far as 1C itself is concerned, that's more so the list, the clear communication
Right.
of ideas, language usage, positive body language. And then when we're looking at the text evidence piece, which would be 5C, that would be use of reliable sources.
Yeah.
So that like positive body language one is kind of interesting. That was like at the first lunch and learn. I remember that being like a topic of conversation in terms of like, well, how do we like norm that? So I don't know how deeply you guys went into that discussion last time, but basically like we've got the language here. How are we modeling that for kids? What are we?
So like, at least in my class, I have kind of reviewed the aspects of this rubric and the language of it. And then they've had practice it previously. So this particular part of the rubric was not something that we graded last time, but we did provide feedback for.
Okay.
And so we kind of gave them an opportunity to go ahead and practice with like a partner and that kind of thing, of what it would look like to have, to be able to score in like the advanced, as opposed to like the other three. And again, it's one of those things that throughout the course of the unit, giving them those opportunities to practice body language, because I do think that body language is like one of the number one things that it just throws the presentation off completely.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at that clarifying statement for 1C2, where it talks about like the nonverbal techniques throughout a presentation to keep an audience engaged, obviously, we know that particularly after COVID, this is a point of
Challenge.
emphasis for them, an opportunity for us. But if like we're recording that in the gradebook, I guess I'm not asking the question very well. Like, how are we going to model for them, right? Like with text evidence, right? That was one of the power standards. We can give them an example of what strong text evidence looks like. Like what can we do to provide like an exemplar?
Excuse me. Well, backing up just a little bit, what Catherine was saying, like in her classroom, that they had the opportunities and showed them that when we brought it back and we're talking about that, I showed mine the rubric. And then we talked about previous ones, and one of the things I found worked fairly well with my kiddos is that I actually asked them, but they recall of different things, and Steph said they had to produce it, and then we talked about it and kind of showed what that would look like and flipped it around the other way. And I think maybe even bringing in just like a little mini lesson with like some not TED Talks, but little YouTube things where it shows, because in truth, when you say that, statistically speaking, 80% of the message comes from your nonverbal, and so that's what we did with ours, and it was pretty receptive because it forced them to tell us what was wrong, so they had to back up and think on their own.
And we also have like our textbook provides examples that are videos and things like that, and they have to go through the module to be able to decipher what is a good, what is the proper way to present with body language as opposed to what's not. And so there's like a module that we put up for them to go through, and it's graded. We don't put that in the grade book, but we do discuss their results with them.
So, but we are putting it in the grade book this time.
Yes.
Like, I just want to make sure so there's consensus that like positive body language, this row in the rubric can be a supplement to the rubric for 1C to give them that like actual graded feedback over that skill, because it's so closely tied to it. So, have we talked yet about like what are going to be the multiple opportunities to give that graded feedback?
We haven't quite talked about that yet. That's something that we were planning on eventually talking about. I think that it would be one way to do feedback would be to do peer feedback and have them do different scenarios where they would be presenting something, and they would get the feedback from their peer, because again, it's their peer that they're doing this PBA for. So, and so if the message isn't getting across, or if it's getting across in the incorrect way, it would be a really good way for them to know that their peers are not, or they're seeing things that,
And that would be super easy to fit into what we've already talked about with like giving them that day to revise. Like that would be a very easy way to start out, would be, okay, look at this rubric now, like keep this in mind. And they could even go so far, like, I think it would be fun if they gave like if they did a bad example on purpose, and then that would kind of be a way to engage kind of, I think, them on that side of the rubric.
Yeah, and like maybe even like a jigsaw, something where they present the intro to theirs to this group, and then maybe something where it goes in and out, and just get almost like not a speed dating, but that effect where you move and it's just your natural, so you get that immediate feedback on your natural, then you can work on
like how you naturally come across with your body language, and then like what you need to be like extra cognizant of for like a presentation.
Maybe we need to focus a little bit of drawn in attention.
Yeah, no, that I love the bad example. I don't know why I keep thinking of like clips from The Office with like Michael Scott, like using those as like you know what I mean, like direct teach pieces, like showing them different clips and having them apply the rubric so that they're getting an understanding of what it looks like, sort of just like the same process, the identification piece before we move to like the application and synthesis of it. Yeah, that I love.
Well,
that.
and it's relatable to them, and if we get them sucked in and engaged and laughing, then it's easier for them to go in. So
Yeah, well, and goodness knows my